Session 3の演題は
Session 3. So, title for this session is Extracting Industrial Security Issues with Use Cases. Moderator is Professor Matsumoto from National University of Yokohama.
Welcome to the security session and today's last session. And we have 5 people. And first of all, I would like to introduce you, each member of this panel session. And first of all, from this part, Dr. Wolfgang Klassen from Siemens. And he is a member of the Platform Industry 4.0 and WG3. And also he works as a head of research group on security for embedded systems in Siemens. And next person is Mr. Thomas Baroschke. He's a manager for security in Fujitsu Technologies solution, and a member of a platform industry 4.0, also WG3, and head of the chair for the EU's AIoTI WG11. Smart manufacturing industry. And so the next one is the Mr. Stefan Zimmermann from VDMA, and he is a head of the Competence Center of Industrial Security. And myself is Tom Matsumoto from Yokohama National University. I'm working for information security and hardware security and network security and database security and everything for security. And the left person is the Mr. Lucas Linke from ZVEI, and he is a manager of security division. And then the final person is that Mr. Yoneda, Dr. Yoneda from Mitsubishi Electric. And he is a member of Industrial Security Action Group of RRI. So first of all, we would like to welcome Dr. Klassen to make some speech. Please.
Okay, thank you very much for this introduction, and thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss something about security with you this afternoon. I would like to take this opportunity and give you some information on the security work which is done in the German platform Industry 4.0. The German Platform Industry 4.0 has a security working group which works on security requirements and expectations. We are confronted with talking about Industry 4.0 as it comes from digitalization principles. We observe that humans, machine processes are more and more interconnected. They make independent decisions. They will decrease development and production costs, and in the hope to have increase of efficiency and profitability. And of course, along this road, we need to consider industrial security questions for our value chains we are working in. And within this group, we identified some key topics. We think that the work has to concentrate on secure communication for Industry 4.0. We need to figure out the essential requirements to secure the communication across the value chain, or how do we say across the value creation networks across different companies, and how we can build a security infrastructure for this, which is suitable for even global communication, that also means across different nations and across the whole world. What we need to provide to be able to do this is, of course, we have to talk about identities of devices. We have to talk identities of entities who and which communicate, and to talk about the verification of these identities. That means authentication. How can we provide authentication principles which have obey the requirements of very fast and real-time communication and are suitable for integration into Industry 4.0 scenarios. A very important issue also is the integrity of data and systems. It's even more important that in office environments, because if there is an attack on such an industrial system, if a system stops, then we know that there is an attack, but if only integrity is disturbed, maybe the producer gets the damage, gets knowledge of the damage 1 or 2 years later when the products come back, because they have been produced with wrong constraints and with wrong ingredients. So this is a very important issue. And we think about also, together with other partners in other countries, how we can improve integrity level of systems which have been generated across Industry 4.0 value chain. Trustworthiness is closely connected to integrity. Trustworthiness means how can I tell my customer how trustful my product is? And when I want to tell my customer a convinced message about the security of the product I sell him, I also need the same information from the supply chain, from the supplier of the parts I'm using for my product. So we think about how can we improve this status of trustfulness, of trustworthiness during the next time. And one of the ideas is maybe to produce standards along this question. Security support for legal contracts is also important. We have not really worked on that so far, but this is an issue we have to go ahead. Because legal contracts across legal domains and company domains have to be audible, they have to be evident in law courses, and this of course needs security support from the technical side. Last not least, what we of course discovered is that the existing security knowledge and awareness is not high enough in the existing industry environments. So we have to figure out programs and ideas how to improve security skills, and this means we also have to work on education and training, especially for companies which are small or medium-sized, which don't have this tradition in this issue. So what we observed when working on these questions, first of all, we are convinced that security by design is a superior principle. Security must not be any longer a so-called afterthought that will be implemented as an add-on after something happened. Yeah? But we have to do security from the very beginning, have to integrate this in the engineering process, in the planning process, in the design process. Every step in the generation of a product or a system has to be accompanied by a security step. And there's already some process description available in the standards, but of course this has to be implemented throughout the whole industry. What is quite important also for the Industry 4.0 environment is dealing with the physical world and at the same time with a digital representation of this physical world, with a digital model. When talking or when organizing a security architecture, we have to do it for the both instances, for the digital world and for the physical world, and they have to fit together. But the point is they are usually implemented in different environments. The physical world are embedded systems, the digital world very often is located in a cloud environment or an office environment, and of course we have to prevent that attackers are going to the attacking the different worlds and in the switch between digital and physical world, and so get harm to the production side. We also need adaptive security architectures. That means Industry 4.0 is supposed to be very agile. We are fast changing in the production environments, and if we have security architectures implemented, we have to follow these changings. And this is not a trivial task. This is not existing today. So we have to think about how can we introduce such standards which are capable in doing that. Authentication, secure identities, I already have mentioned this before. We see IT security as an enabler of business models, of Industry 4.0 business models, which are really necessary to introduce that, and so have a very positive impact of a business model and the value proposition, if we go by this. And we also observed that there will be some change in the future between B2B and B2C communication because of batch size 1 situations. For instance, when you buy a car, you may be able to communicate direct with the car manufacturer, not only as it is in the moment with the car dealer in between. That means there's a direct communication between customer and manufacturer, and this, of course, has to be also secured in terms of e-commerce. Last not least, we observe that prevention and reaction are still needed. Nevertheless, introducing a high security level in your environment, there will happen some security incident in the future. We will never be able to achieve 100% security, so we also have to have processes in place in the companies how to deal with security events after they have happened. And all this, of course, has to be put into future standards. We are working in different groups on security standardization and also in groups to figure out the future needs for Industry 4.0 related security standards. There are a couple of results available from our working group. Here are some of them listed. You can access them over the platform portal. All of these results are in English available, and they are free accessible. And I would recommend going through this and getting some idea about the results we have achieved so far. So last not least, I want to give you some information on a German national funded product. It's called UNO. It has been has been worked on the product within the last 2.5 years. It was funded by the Ministry for Research and Education in Germany with about 20 companies and institutions taking part of it. We are working in this project on 4 different use cases and application scenarios in which want to integrate security in typical Industry 4.0 scenarios. The new approach the German government wanted to see in this project is not going ahead and work on single security mechanisms or algorithms or new ideas from the very academical side. What we wanted to do is get experience with integrating security into real processes, working together with company with companies which were more or less security agnostic in the past, which didn't have capacity and the knowledge in place. And this worked out very well. Yeah, we introduced security, for instance, in processes for furniture factory assembling lines. And the discussion is very valuable in Germany on that. And this, of course, is one of the reasons that quite some companies from the small and medium-sized enterprises are getting now also into this field and discussing how they will be able to introducing security processes in their corporations. And I want to say on this way also our associations VDMA and ZVEI are quite important in this discussion. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay.
We will
Thank you, Dr. Klassen, for a very organized activity introduction from the Industry 4.0 WG3 and the introduction of German National Funded Project. Thank you. And so then I would like to proceed to touch to Mr. Varashuke to say two topics from AIoTI and security issues. So please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm sitting here in two roles. One is the European aspect of Internet of Things. This is an alliance built founded by the European Commission 2015. Now we are established since 2 years, and the idea of working together in Europe is at the end creating a community with around 200 members. Enterprise, SME, research are working together, and there are some founding members you can see on the left side, and I will say something about the working groups. There are 4 horizontal working groups talking about IoT research, innovation, IoT standardization and policy. They are driven sometimes by legal requirements as well and standards which are really existing or has to be established in future. And we have the working groups on the verticals, and the verticals are created by the idea that they are clusters where IoT is working in. Going deeper to the detail of smart manufacturing, we are talking about a special recommendation. We are interested in industrial IoT requirements. One of the topics are governance, so that all in Europe can understand more or less what this is. And the alignment is made to what we call a cluster in Europe. This cluster is coming from other associations like Industry 4.0. We have approximately 13. I say approximately because some of the countries are doing this more or less in future as well. And on the other side, we are going to the innovation. You heard something about innovation hubs today, and this is one of the schemes. And on the other side, we are participating in H2020 projects, which are sometimes very important to elaborate future solutions. So this is to be said about this organization. The strength is at the end a dialogue and interaction between Internet of Things actors in Europe, and creating a dynamic European IoT ecosystem. At the end, this is The reason why I'm talking now in the second presentation about European aspects of security. What does it mean to talk about security in Europe is a real hard story behind, because we started this year with a new approach regarding the speech of Vice President Ansip. He is talking in a very intensive way on the 26th of June about involving norms, improving harmonization, and building resilience. This is coming from the aspects that cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, manufacturing plants, power grids, chemical plants, transport and water systems, financial networks, even nuclear facilities are the new reality. And we came to the conclusion cybersecurity is now on the top of the list of business risks, and not just for the financial sector. It affects every one of us. So it's not a European approach, it's a reality globally. So having this in mind, we have to understand that the Council of the European Union came to the understanding that recognizing the importance of cybersecurity for the prosperity, growth and security of Europe and integrity of our free and democratic societies and their underpinning processes in the digital age, both by protecting rule of law and human rights and fundamental freedom of every individual, is absolutely top important. And the underlying need to address cybersecurity with a coherent and global level, as cyber threats can have an impact on our democracy, prosperity, stability and security, have to be understood. So at the end notes, we noted that at a high level of cyber resilience across Europe is also important to achieve trust in the digital single market, which is an economical factor. We are just talking about a stable market in Europe and a stable market in Japan, and they have to be developed in a clear way. This is the base on which we started this approach. Then we came to the idea asking our citizens what they believe in, and they told us that 45% installed something in their private or SME environment which seems to protect their environments. 35% are opening emails only if they know the source. 61% admit that security and privacy features play a role, and 27% are willing to pay for more for this. So this is understanding in our region. I'm not sure that this is the same understanding in your region, but I want to present this is the base on which the Commission works on. Now we came to the situation, you heard it perhaps this day. In September this year, we started to work on a new Cybersecurity Act because the regulation in Europe has to be done. The background is very simple to understand. The industry did not do enough in the past. So at the end, we had an act from 2013, but we misunderstood that this is a real impact. And so we have to increase the need and to regulate more. This is the background in Brussels, to harden the environments in future. And so we came to the conclusion there has to be an entity who is responsible for all this, to be a partner for the member states, and this is a cybersecurity agency with the name ENISA. Coming to this point, we had the impact that information and communication technology should be certified in future. This is absolutely in discussion. There are some parties which only believe in this scheme. Others say there has to be another way to find a secure environment. This is still not finished. The context of Cybersecurity Act is at the end that we had in 2016 to adopt a communication and strengthening European cyber resilience system and fostering competitive and innovative cybersecurity industry, as you could see here. And on the right side, you can see the first EU cybersecurity strategy was adopted in 2013, but was not implemented so fast and so hard that we are not in an insecure situation now. At the end, the European Union wants to find out a way which is strong enough so that the member states can handle correctly. We have 28, it's different from your country, but at the end we have to work together. This is, if this is working, this could be a good scheme to understand how Germany and Japan can work together. By the way, the European contract working together with Japan based on the same idea. And the directive, which is coming from the past, this is a so-called NIS. This is the Network Infrastructure Security regulation, which says infrastructures, critical infrastructures, has to be secured much, much more than they had been done in the past. So, coming to the action points, it's very simple. We have to review the recent regulation. This is one of the main tasks. And on the other side, to have a new executing role for ENISA. This is still in discussion. This is not political ready now, but this is the way we work at the moment. And coming to the point what the focus areas are, we can see the NIS directive itself, the IoT security and certification framework are the parts in which our region is thinking, but it's absolutely clear that if we have a risk management in IS, in critical infrastructure domains, that doesn't mean that in other regions this will be understood in the same way. So we are living only on one globe. The intention is to find a blueprint for the whole globe at the end. If we don't do this, you are affected by cyber threat attack, and we seem to be secure. This is not the solution. So at the end, we have to understand that all the IT security assets are part of the solutions on the left side. The NIS directive addresses more or less IT, OT, and IoT. And so this is part of the connected internet discussion we have today. And on the right side, you can see not only the details you can see on the bullets, but the most important points seem to be that automation control systems are addressed by the Commission directly. I had never seen this in such a clear form before, so this is an absolutely important message for you. I believe we can stop at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Baroshke, for a very impressive or a stimulating talk. Thank you. And so the last one of the talk part would be Dr. Yoneda from our group. So please.
Thank you. Have you ever heard of in 2015, Ukraine power plant substation were attacked and shut down. And as a result, 200,000 people suffer from blackout. And this year, the really famous ransomware WannaCry attacked all over the world. And in Japan, one famous automobile company's factory shut down for 1 day. Just 1 day. It's really crucial damage. Okay, so it is needed to state that information security is really important. And then last year, Japanese government and German government make agreement of promoting the cybersecurity for Industry 4.0. And then the RRI in charge of the Japan side promoting industrial cybersecurity. So today, I'd like to share what kind of activities are there in our RRI Industrial Security Action Group. Okay, and the first, we have to set the goal, our common goal. And then, as in this slide, our goal is to identify the new security requirement in future manufacturing system. It is the blue area. And within that, there is a smaller circle that security requirement already specified in IEC 62443. If you're the security-related people, you know IEC 62443. And it is comprehensive security architecture, security requirement for Industry 3.0. But in Industry 4.0, engineering chain integrated and supply chain is integrated. And then in order to integrate by digitalization, a lot of kind of horizontal integration among different type of cooperation is needed. So this really require new type of security requirement, and that's a goal we want to identify. And then how to identify the security requirement? Actually, this is a really difficult task. And in the center of the circle means the security requirement. And then in order to identify the security requirement at the left side, we have to first identify the system architecture, okay? Because we should conduct a security analysis to the security architecture in order to identify the security requirement. But the security architecture is one solution of business use case which provide valuable, right? So we first share the use case from the standardization action group already mentioned in Ishikuma-san. And then this leads to identify the security requirement. And then the business use case we share is, as mentioned earlier, early fault detection use case. And then in this business use case, the components in the factory already in operation is monitored, remotely monitored by using the operation log, okay? And usually typically done by some remote maintenance vendor. And then by identifying some abnormal trend, we can identify that the component in some factory would be breakdown after 1 week, okay? And then if we can predict the breakdown before 1 week, we can prepare for replacing the component, or we can reschedule the production plan, okay? So this means that we can minimize the downtime of the plant operation or factory operation, and this has a great value. So after sharing this business use case, we try to identify the system architecture as written in this slide. And then the left down part is the typical manufacturer in German, okay? And they have the 2 factories above and down. And then in each factory, MES, PLC, and robot controllers are there. Okay? And then through internet, on the upper right corner, the external advisors are there. And they are typically the remote maintenance vendor. Okay? And then by conducting the security analysis to this system use case, we identified a new typical security requirement for Industry 4.0. And the first, we identified the three important security requirements. The first is the dynamic access control changing mechanism is needed. The reason is, as shown in this figure, sometimes the number of external advisor increases. The reason is the component provider provide the remote maintenance service after operation of the factory. Okay, and then sometimes the factory, the production in the factory 1 is going to the production in the factory 2 because of the maintenance of the factory 1. Okay, and in that case, what component is monitored is changed, or who monitor is changed, and then we have to adjust the access control rule dynamically, and it could be done. It cannot be done by manually. So this some automatic dynamic changing mechanism needed. And the second security requirement is, as shown in this figure, the manufacturer in Germany. There are many components there in German, and then the monitoring component are in Japan, and then each component should be authenticated to each other. Okay, and this means that each component has globally unique identity, and also it should not be changed or altered or impersonated. So this means secure identity is needed. So globally unique, secure identity is needed. Okay, and the last of the security requirement is the privacy protection issue. As shown in this figure, the log of operation of each component in the German area is transported to the Japan or other third country. So the data in the collection, the data, operation data in German is under control of the EU or German regulation, right? So before going out to the other countries, the personal, the privacy information should be protected. For example, it should be wiped out or anonymized, right? So in order to identify after we configure this system architecture, we can identify these three security requirements. And then these are written in this slide, and the black point, these security requirement category into three parts: system network related security requirement, and component related security requirement, and then data related security requirement. And these categories are get from the categorized of IEC 62443. And then the security requirement newly identified is written in the red, as I described in the previous. And then this is the future work. We identified three important security requirements specific for Industry 4.0 with using this, conducting this 1-2 process, okay? And then we need to add different type of system architecture or different type of business use case which is specific for Industry 4.0. And then by adding this system architecture or business use case, our identified security requirement could be comprehensive or generalized. So that is what we want to do next. So please look forward to our outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoneda-san. And so I would like to ask Mr. Zimmerman to say some question or other comments around these talks. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Matsumoto, Professor Matsumoto. And I'm proud to be here on the stage and in Japan talking about the security. And what I mentioned or what I heard about you is mostly about technology. It's mostly about systems. And what I missed a little bit is the topic of people, the topic of humans just realizing the security or realizing the Industry 4.0 or digitalization in the companies. And I think it's like when you talk about a child, Industry 4.0 is like a child. You have, it was born in Germany, of course, yeah? And 7 years old, not yet started to walk, I think. We're just learning to walk. And our goal is that we, at the end, have an autonomously, so self-learning child, yeah, as a goal, and is independently living everywhere in the world. So it's a global child. And we need some skills for that. We need teachers for that. And maybe there will be some time when we give our data into American cloud services, maybe. But maybe we can find our cloud service by our own. So this is my approach. It's a human approach, and we need skills for people, skills for developers, of course. That was mentioned by Wolfgang. But we need also skills for the users, for the operators, for the consumers. That's called awareness for security, and education for security. And I've learned that in Japan there's an industrial cybersecurity center of excellence, just started in April 2017 from MITI, and it's a public-private partnership, and it helps to combat. It says itself, it helps to combat Japan's shortfall on cybersecurity manpower. So this is the first step, and we need now this in Germany too. We don't have that in Germany, and I think this is a point to start with.
Thank you very much for to enhancing our discussion. So, how do you think about the issues, Mr. Linke?
Yes, thank you very much. I think since we are facing almost the end of the day, it's important to figure out the essentials. What are the key takeaways regarding cybersecurity or industrial security? And my guess would be if we make a spontaneous service in this room, the outcome would be that 99% would agree standardization is important, partnership is important. This is what we heard all day long, and this is a very crucial point. However, I want to raise another point that industry has to make and do its homework, because in 2016, last fall, at the ZVI in Germany, we made a security survey, and we figured out that for the question, do you know international or national security standards? You get approval rates, you get ratios from 60 to up to 80% where companies say, yes, we do know the security standards. But if you ask, okay, but how many companies actually use and implement those standards? You get rates from 6%, 8%, maximum 10%. And this is a gap that is very important, but can harm our work for Industry 4.0 in a tremendous way. Because if we do not close this gap, that we have standards, but also companies start to implement them, then we have a real problem. And this is my, let me say, my takeaway also for today, that we have this task to create standards, international security standards, but that we also need help and support for SMEs to implement standards. And number three, that we have to find ways how to receive feedback. What are the problems? Why are companies struggling when they try to implement security standards, because this is not a self-running system. And this is also a task for associations, I guess, in Germany and in Japan, to ask the membership, to ask companies, how do they do with security standards? Are there gaps? Are there maybe just too many pages to read? And then the question, how do we break it down? And why is this important? Because to have standards and to implement standards is, in my perspective, the only answer to what Thomas Woroschke said, to avoid regulation. That we have industry-driven initiatives for security and not policy or regulation-driven approaches. So I would sum it up in this way. The stronger our initiatives for standardization implementations are, the stronger the German and Japanese partnerships are on ISO and IEC level, the easier it will be to raise the security level, and the easier it will be to remain and have industry-driven initiatives and not be regulated in a maybe more detailed and maybe even harmful way.
Thank you. Do you have any response from the Mr. Woroschke? Do you have any response from the Mr. Linke's comment?
Yes, of course, a lot, but the time is too short to give all the recipes. In general, what we address is not only having the consciousness, but having the power to do this. What we addressed indirectly or directly is we have SMEs, we have enterprises, and we have research, and all three participants are not working in the same way. If you are part or if you are living in an enterprise company, you have different decisions inside such a company. And if you look to the SMEs, they are mostly not powerful enough to do exactly that, what they need to do. So we have to understand there is a gap, and this gap is not coming from your brain, it's coming from the business, from the cost, from the question, why didn't we accept it 2013 that we can and shall do something, so that the Commission came to the conclusion it's not good enough, we have to renew the understanding and bring this to a regulation level. Because in that situation, an enterprise company says, oh, this is a question of cost, but not a cost of investment, it's a cost of penalty. And this is something of, yes, I would say, a kind of discipline. If we need this in our world, at the end, this is the recipe. If we are clever enough, we can avoid that.
Okay, thank you. So we have only 12 minutes left. So do you have any question between your talks? No? Yes, please.
I have a simple question. Yeah. Could you show the slide of no? Matsumoto-san's. Yeah. I'd like to show your Professor Matsumoto's second page, and then if not, it's okay. I'd like to share the story of what happened in the Industrial Security Action Group in the first from.
Excuse me, I would like to have slides. My slide. From
this April to July, and then. As I said earlier, we set our goal to identify the new security requirements specific for Industry 4.0. The second slide, please. And then the first, we said that we should identify the new security of Industry 4.0. New security. What does it mean by security? And then this leads to the great confusion. And then in this slide, the security is breakdown into security requirement, security function, and security implementation. Okay, so in order to identify in order to solve our problem, sometimes the word we use is really vague, and each people think about the different meaning of the same word. So I think that the German side already have the same situation. Different people use the same word with the different meaning, right? So how to resolve this issue? I'd like to ask the German side. If you have any comments.
Okay, please, Mr. Linke.
Yeah, this is actually a very important point, because what I learned in the last 2 or 3 days since I have been here in Tokyo is that we're facing, let me say, we're starting in different starting points. In Germany, with the platform Industry 4.0, we tend to start on the conceptual level. So we write guidelines, we write white papers, and try to figure out what are generic. We try to find generic requirements for the IoT world, for the Industry 4.0 world. And this is fine. And in Japan, you start very much bottom up with use cases, with a concrete example, maybe not with a clear idea about the conceptual world or the final architecture, but you start to try and concrete examples. And now, this is how I understand you, the question is, how do we meet in the middle? How do we synchronize the conceptions and the white papers with use cases and the bottom-up examples? And to be honest, I do not have a clear, ready answer yet. I guess the only way to start is conferences and talks like this, or this partnership in the working groups or in the standardization board. However, I'm very optimistic that we find and we will agree on internationally on, let me say, a set on basic security requirements in generally for the IoT world that maybe are true in almost every vertical, maybe. But then you will always have requirements for each sector depending on the environment, the risk environment, and then this will be, again, a part in a task for standardization. But I'm very curious, I'm very optimistic that we find agreement on the basic level, and then we see sector per sector how we can move forward.
Yes, please,
yeah, maybe 2 remarks on that. First of all, in IAC TC65, we now have a discussion group, a focus group, which is exactly dealing with this question, talking about security requirements of special scenarios, which are, in this case, actually have been provided by the Japanese colleagues and are discussed now very heavily together with the German colleagues. So it's exactly what we need, yeah, to meet, not in the middle, but to meet in the right direction, I say. And what I also can observe, or have been observing within the last 6 months, I think there's an international agreement also inside the different national security institutes and services people, that there is a need for international agreed IoT minimum security level definition as a standard. And we are working on that. In Germany, I know that you are working on that in Japan, and I also know that other countries like in Korea or Singapore, they have the same ideas. So it's important that actually within such organizations and events that we discuss this, the possible outcome on that and agree on a global level, because that's a tricky thing with security. There is sometimes the danger that it will be solved on a national level. And this prevents international organized communication, international secure cooperation. So we have really to prevent that only the national institutions work on that, but to go together on the international basis. Even Europe is not enough. Yeah? Europe is just, for us, a beginning, go away from German-only solutions And as a matter of fact, it starts out when you talk with these people, they have documents available on this question which are only written in Korean, German, or just the national language. We have to put this on the international agenda.
Okay. So maybe Zimmermann is the first.
Yeah, you said you want to find out what we can achieve. So I don't think that we start at the bottom or on the top. Actually, when you take this slides, sorry, can we get the slides back? So the future security requirements. So we really talked about the future security requirements because we said, okay, Industry 4.0 is something we want to achieve, and let's assume that we get 100% connected machines in the future, and what are the future security requirements for them? And so we talked with researchers about that, and we made a document upon it and called it Industry 4.0 Security Guidance. Just writing down what could be the future security requirements for those machines that are not existing yet. So we started with that. So now we said, okay, there's somehow something that's not available yet upon this, maybe the authentication part for machines in the future, how machines connect each other. It's not solved, but let's talk about that. We should have that in the future. So then you have to strip down the content of it and find out which is already there, which is already in standards. Then you have to cover these in the standards, but then there's something left that's not in the standards. So you start finding out what needs to be researched, what needs to be standardized, and that is, I think, the approach from the manufacturers of machines. We tried that, and now we had the problem that we discussed with OPC-UA, the data communication platform, and we said, okay, OPC-UA is good because there's security inside, but we started then, after requiring OPC-UA security, we started about talking, could be a function to communicate, and then we tried to implement it, but then we failed because security is there, but not yet so much defined that we can use get some software that we can buy software. So we come back to the point of the security requirements again.
Okay, Mr. Baroshke.
Yes, I want to point out that we are not discussing about technology only because it's so funny. We are talking about business. And at the end, we are talking about two parts of business. One is called white business, and the other one is called black business. And this is the reason why we are sitting here. At the end, if there is only a good world, we shouldn't do anything, but it is not. So we have to understand that security is part of our securing our business and our lives. There are different businesses, and they are really high. And if you understand the need, there is no question to wait. Otherwise, you will have the consequences nearby. This is maybe not so nice information, but this is the real reason why we are sitting here.
Okay, so you have something to work?
Yeah, because Thomas said something very crucial. He said we do not have time to wait, and since we are really at the end of this conference day, sometimes it's good to formalize a wish, what is to come, what we should try to accomplish in the near future. And I would say what happened this morning is actually very, I'm curious about it. This morning we had this signature of the cooperation between RIA and the IIC. And now we have the international situation that we have an established partnership between Europe, Japan, and the IIC colleagues. And if it's possible in the next future, in the next 12 months, to form a strong understanding and maybe a common definition of security requirements regarding what Wolfgang said, regarding, for example, trustworthiness, then this would be really a step forward. So my wish would be, if we meet here in 12 months again, that we can look back and see what did we accomplish regarding the definition and the understanding of trustworthiness between Europe, Germany, Japan, and the US and the IIC. And if so, then I think we make a very important step forward.
Thank you, everyone. And so we have only 30 seconds. So, and in this session, we would like to extract the security issues with use cases. And there are diversity of approaches and many challenges remain. And the German side and the Japanese side, namely the RRI Industry Action Group, would like to collaborate to clarify what is the requirement, essential requirement for approaching to the Industry 4.0. And thank you very much for joining us. And so the time is up, and we should like to continue our discussion. Thank you very much.
モデレーターの松本様、そしてパネリストの皆様に今一度大きな拍手をお送りください。
Professor Matsumoto and panelists, thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。